My name is Marina Caldwell, and I'm 28. The night my boyfriend told me, "You need to make a good impression on my friends," something in me stood up and left the room. The part that kept smoothing over moments that should have snagged. Cascadia looked like a magazine spread pretending not to, all brass and soft light and a wall of bottles that made you feel small and thirsty. Vance, my boyfriend, was already at a corner table with 5 women who turned to look at me like they were calibrating lenses. He stood, kissed my cheek, and said to the table, "Ladies, this is Marina. Marina, meet the inner circle." Inner circle did the thing to my spine that exclusive always does. I smiled anyway. Coats lifted, earrings flashed. On the table, 2 wine bottles already decanted, appetizers nibbled down to decorative parsley. "We started a little early," said a woman with a sharp bob and an expensive laugh. "Hope you don't mind." "Not at all," I said, even as a waiter slid another menu toward me, like a dare. The conversation was a soft interrogation. "What do you do?" "Operations consulting." "Where do you live?" "A decent apartment with decent light." "What do you drive?" "A paid-off Honda that I'm oddly fond of." Every answer drew the smallest look, like a card being mentally moved from one pile to another. Vance squeezed my hand beneath the table when I said paid off. "She's practical," he told them, "and generous." The word generous hung there like a chandelier. They ordered like the check would never land. Lobster. Wagyu. A woman named Shay said she couldn't decide and asked for both. The table applauded the decision like it was a personal breakthrough. Somewhere in my head, I started doing math and then stopped. The way you stop a nosebleed you can't really control. Just tilt and breathe and pretend you're fine. I told myself what women tell themselves when we were taught to pass class with extra credit and grace. Meeting the friends is important. They love him. If they love me too, things get easier. The wine softened the edges. Stories braided across the table. Vance looked proud, like he'd seated me at a board he'd long wanted me to join. I wanted to believe I was being welcomed, not weighed. When the check arrived, the waiter placed it in the center, as if marking the final scene. Nobody moved. Then, with a smile that belonged in a sales deck, Vance slid the leather folder toward me. "Babe," he said lightly, like a private joke, "you've got this, right? First impressions." There is a sound that lives between a laugh and a gasp. I made it quietly. The table held its breath. Somewhere, a fork touched linen. I opened the folder like I was opening a door in a house I just realized wasn't mine. $2,127.43. Numbers stared back as if they were offended I could read them. I felt my face arrange itself the way professionals do in meetings that have just gone wrong. "This is everyone's meal," I said, and heard my voice sound polite about a boundary. The bobbed woman laughed. "Don't be silly." Vance's thumb tapped the table. "You said you wanted them to see who you are," he murmured, pitched for me alone. "A partner who invests." The waiter hovered with ballet training. I handed over my card because sometimes the only way to show there's a problem is to let the problem speak. 2 minutes later, the waiter returned, throat cleared, with gentle sorrow. "I am terribly sorry, Ms. Caldwell, but your card was declined. I tried it 3 times. Would you like to try another?" Silence is a character who arrives whenever you need a villain. I opened my banking app under the table. The number blinked back. $87.50 available. The savings account below it held what mattered. I'd moved most of my checking yesterday for a better interest rate. I hadn't moved it back. I was suddenly a woman with a budget and a target on her back. "That's odd," I said. And it was. "I moved money to savings yesterday. I can transfer it back in the morning." Vance's smile dropped its mask. "You don't have $2,000 in checking?" "Not tonight," I said evenly. "I have it. It's just not where a waiter can reach it." "Wow," he said, and it was not admiration. The word provider floated between us, a ghost from someone else's story. The waiter, tireless diplomat. "Perhaps the table would like the remainder divided? 6 ways?" What happened next was a chorus of unpreparedness. I left my wallet in the car. I only brought my ID. Vance said it was covered. There was movement, frantic and small, like mice behind a wall. The bobbed woman blinked at me with curated pity. "This is awkward." Vance's voice found an edge. "Outside," he said to me, low, "now." In the cooling night, the valet lights threw coins of brightness onto dark concrete. Vance faced me with a posture I recognized from people about to sell you something they never intend to use themselves. "What kind of woman are you?" he said. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I told them you were different. I told them you were solid." "Embarrassing for who?" I asked. It came out tired instead of sharp. "For me," he snapped. "For us. This was a test, Marina. My circle needed to know you could step up without making it a thing." "By paying $2,000 for your friend's dinner?" "They're not my friends. They're my network. High standards. We operate on a certain level, and a woman who's with me picks up the bill to prove she belongs." I finished it for him. Words can be architecture or trapdoors. He laughed, ugly. "Don't twist it. You knew what tonight was. Show them you're all in. You failed. Spectacularly." I thought about my savings tucked aside like a quiet plan, about the way he said partner when what he wanted was a sponsor. "I didn't fail a test I didn't consent to take," I said. "And if your network can't survive a split check, maybe it's built on the wrong thing." He stepped closer, lowering his voice until the syllables pressed on my skin. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go in there and cover this with money I shouldn't have to use, and then we're done. I don't date women who embarrass me." "Then don't," I said. I surprised myself by meaning it cleanly. He stared at me long enough to find nothing. Then he turned on his heel and went back inside. Through the windows, I watched small chaos, purses emptying, cards appearing, a manager summoned. It took 30 minutes to sort a mess that had been pretending to be a standard. I sat in my car and let the engine stay silent. My phone woke with a flurry, not from Vance, from unfamiliar numbers that organized themselves into cruelty like they'd rehearsed. "You're actually pathetic. Vance deserves better. Big talk, small limits." I blocked with the bored calm of someone sweeping dust off a shelf, then curiosity tugged, hard, impolite. I checked Vance's Instagram, watched his story from that afternoon slide into place like a puzzle piece. "Tonight's the night. Let's see if she passes. Know your worth." The test had a caption before it had a victim. I commented once, a relic I knew would be gone by morning. "Failed your test. Passed my own." He blocked me in under an hour. For a second, I felt 12 again, dismissed from a game I hadn't realized was an audition. Then the 12-year-old in me stood up and left too, and the woman stayed. 3 days later, a Venmo request landed with the kind of confidence only audacity wears. $354.57 from Vance, my portion from Friday, since you couldn't be a partner about it. Declined. A second request, same amount. You owe me this. Declined again. The unknown number that followed had a woman's voice and a false sweetness. "This is Marissa, Vance's sister. Pay him back now. You humiliated him on purpose. The least you can do is cover what he paid." I hung up without ceremony. She called again. "I'd hate for your job to hear you stiffed a table." I looked at my reflection in the black screen of my phone and saw the calm that comes right before precision. "Tell Vance," I said when I finally answered, "that the next person who threatens me should practice using their real name." There was a pause, then a click. That night, a stranger DM'd me from a private account. "Hey, you don't know me, but you should know Vance. Runs that dinner test on women. If you want receipts, I've got them." For the first time in days, something like relief cracked through the anger. Receipts are colder than rage and far more useful. "Send them," I wrote back. The typing dots bloomed like a forecast. The DM came with screenshots like weather alerts, time-stamped, geotagged, undeniable. "He did this to me in April," the woman wrote. "Same restaurant group, different location. Same 5 women, same script. Make a good impression." When the check landed, he slid it to me like it was part of the ritual. When I hesitated, he smirked and said, "It's an investment." Her name was Bethany Ruiz, and she suggested we meet in a coffee shop that smells like second chances, burnt espresso, and warm bread. She showed up in a blazer and sneakers, the uniform of someone who moves through the world ready to run if she has to. She set her phone between us without preamble. "Start with this," she said, thumb moving with practiced precision. A WhatsApp group lit the screen. A tiled header photo of champagne flutes and gold confetti like a corporate retreat trapped inside a mood board. The test table. Members. Vance and the 5 women I'd met, plus 3 more I hadn't. The thread went back months. There were spreadsheets attached. Names, occupations, restaurants, Notes that read like scouting reports for a sport I hadn't wanted to play. Vance. Marina. Ops Consulting. Paid off Honda. Might be practical. Test fry at Cascadia. Target spend, 2K plus. Maddie. Pre-order 2 bottles. Shay. Do your indecisive thing. Shay. Copy. I'll say I want both. Vance. Language. Inner circle. First impression. Invest. Marissa. Change name to avoid sister. I'll follow up if she balks. Got it. My name looked tidy and small next to people who'd never needed permission to use it. Bethany swiped to photos. Snapshots from various dinners, women with polite smiles mid-laugh, checks rounded to 4 digits, a hand sliding a leather folder across linen. The captions were efficient in a way that made my teeth hurt. Passed without blinking. Keep. Asked about splitting. Drop. Paid half after push. Keep for drinks-only tier. They run tiers? I asked, numb and curious at once. Bethany nodded, jaw tight. If you pay easily, you become a provider. They escalate. If you hesitate but can be guilted, they move you to smaller group tests. If you refuse, they shun and smear. Shun and smear? DM campaigns, subtweets, calls to your job. Vance has a whole speech under respecting women that he deploys like a fire blanket. I thought of the unknown numbers after Cascadia, the phrases that arrived prepackaged and empty and mean. Marissa, I said. He called her his sister. Bethany blew out a laugh with no joy in it. Ex-girlfriend. On again, off again. Sister plays better when they want moral leverage. She's their enforcer when charm fails. Does she know she's being used? She knows she's using people, Bethany said, and that arrival of weariness made me believe her. There were voice notes too. Cavalier. Brittle. Vance. Bright and performative. The thing about standards is, you don't explain them, you demonstrate them. If she won't invest, she's not a woman who understands partnership. A blonde voice I recognize from the table. She gives quiet smart. Those are the worst. They think saving equals virtue. The laugh in reply was a saw. I felt something animal try to stand inside me. I pressed it down and reached for the steadier part, the part that keeps records, writes invoices, reads contracts line by line until midnight with a highlighter turning yellow to neon. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked. For what? Being predatory isn't illegal. Manipulation's not a statute, Bethany said. Asked me why I didn't torch them online. I tried. They brigaded my comments, called me bitter, said I had buyer's remorse, said I fabricated screenshots. I still have recruiters who don't call back. We sat with it, the way a story can calcify around you if enough people repeat it confidently enough. How many of us? I asked. Bethany slid a Google sheet my way. The tab names were seasons: spring, summer, fall. 21 women in 2 years. A column for spend with totals that made me swallow wrong. Another for aftermath. Blocked, smearing campaign, reconciliation attempt, repeat dinner, graduated to bottle service, written like a punchline to a horror joke. And no one ever, broke the cycle? I asked, hearing how naive that loves to sound. Some tried, she said. One woman showed up to a second test with her brother and 3 friends and filmed the whole thing. They made her the villain in the comments for harassing them. Another sent a letter to Vance's employer. He resigned before they fired him and pivoted to freelance brand consulting. There's always a pivot if your face fits in the mirror just right. What about restaurants? I pressed. Patterns leave residue. Managers notice. Bethany's eyes sharpened. They did. That's how I knew you might be next. A hostess from another place DM'd me when she saw Vance's reservation with a note about the check. She said they've tried the send food back for comps thing too, but unless someone formalizes a complaint, it stays gossip. Formalize. The word moved through me like a key sliding home. Bethany must have seen it in my face. I know that look, she said. Just be careful. They play charming until they don't, and then they play dirty. I thought of Marissa's sugar-edged threats. The way my full name looked so cooperative in that chat. Dirty is a category, I said. Documentation is an answer. When we parted, she squeezed my arm with a kind of gentleness I wanted to keep. If you do something, she said, loop in other victims. It's harder to call one of us hysterical if there are 6 of us speaking calmly. On the walk to my car, the city seemed newly legible. Signs I'd been reading one way now flipped and made sense in another language. I sat with my phone and stared at my own unlocked face for a long 10 seconds. Then I opened a blank note and started a list I titled, with deliberate pettiness, housekeeping. Archive, screenshots of the test table, names, dates, captions, screen record scrolling to preserve context. Corroborate, gather DMs from Bethany, the hostess, any other victims willing to speak. Timestamp everything. Identify, confirm Marissa's real identity and relationship to Vance. Save aliases used. Sister. Narrative map. Build a timeline from recruitment to smear. Mark identical phrases. First impression, invest, provider, know your worth. Restaurant outreach. Find managers open to formal statements. Ask about prior incidents. Risk assessment. Expect escalation. Calls to job, veiled threats, public posts. Prepare neutral, documented responses. Liability. Redact last names/addresses. Keep focus on behavior patterns, not personal data. By the time I typed the 7th line, the tremor that had nested at the base of my sternum since Cascadia had steadied to a hum I recognized. This was the feeling I got before a complicated project, one with stakeholders and unknowns, and people who would try to throw glitter over rot and call it sparkle. I knew how to strip that back to wood. That night, Marissa called once more, switching numbers like masks. Last chance to pay what you owe, she sang, a maraca of charm in the background. We can make this go away. I put her on speaker while I saved the call. Is this your sister voice or your ex-girlfriend voice? I asked. Always curious which role you're playing when you threaten strangers. There was a heartbeat of silence no training prepares you for. Then, snapped Sugar. You think you're clever? No, I said. I think I'm thorough. She hung up. It felt like the first clean click of a lock opening. In the days that followed, more DMs arrived like birds who'd finally recognized the window as glass and not sky. Some were messy with rage. Some were simple and devastating. He told me I embarrassed him by asking to split. He said a real woman invests without keeping score. He posted me on his story with a caption about tests. When I didn't pay, those women called me names I haven't heard since middle school. I collected them all, asked permission to quote, redacted where people wanted to disappear. I built a color-coded timeline on my kitchen table with sticky notes that made the wood look like it had bloomed. When I finally laid down the sequence, approach, love bomb, invite, inner circle, overspend, the slide, moral language, smear, it looked less like romance and more like a funnel. One DM stood out. A bartender from Cascadia's sister restaurant wrote, "We've had issues with that group. If you're filing anything, the GM might actually listen this time." She added a manager's email. And blessedly, the words "cameras roll all night." I slept better knowing a lens had witnessed what my memory kept replaying. The next morning, a recruiter I'd been hoping to hear from sent a curt, "We're moving in another direction." I checked LinkedIn and saw a profile view from Marissa L., which she had forgotten to hide. The petty inside me saluted the sloppy. I logged the incident under expected pressure. I replied to the recruiter with a bland thank you and moved the sticky note labeled "job noise" further up my board. At lunch, Bethany texted, "2 more women want to talk. One says she's got a screen recording of Vance bragging about writing dinners off as client meetings." Something low and electric moved through my hands. Personal expenses as business write-offs. It wasn't the point of my outrage, but it was a point with teeth. I stood in my kitchen, looking at the timeline and the list and the tidy cruelty of people who called exploitation a standard. There wasn't triumph in me, just a stubborn, practical clarity. First, gather, then formalize, then let the consequences do what they do when you stop cushioning them. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, the test table, evidence. I named files like a librarian who loves an index. I drafted an email to a restaurant group with the subject line, "Patterned Payment Coercion, Formal Statement, and Supporting Media." I outlined a simple site template with dates, redacted screenshots, and testimony collages. I wrote a neutral, legally sterile header. This page documents a repeated pattern of coerced payment tests conducted by a private group. All materials are first-hand or corroborated and used with permission. Identifying information beyond first names has been removed. Before I hit save, I scrolled back through Vance's old grid, motivational quotes, gym mirrors, soft focus cappuccinos. Hidden in the tiles was a boomerang from 6 months ago, a leather check presenter sliding across a table and back, the caption, "She passed." The comments were a bouquet of fist bump emojis and crown icons. I screen recorded it twice. When I closed my phone, the apartment felt taller. My savings account waited like a calm fact. My calendar had blocks in it labeled evidence hour and statement draft and call manager. There's a version of me that smiles and nods and lets benefit of the doubt pick the lock to her peace. She had the night off. Part 3, the counter move. The next week moved in chapters. Chapter 1, emails. Chapter 2, meetings. Chapter 3, the kind of silence that means something's happening behind it. By Monday, I had statements from 3 women, 2 restaurant managers, and a bartender who'd quietly forwarded internal reports about customer manipulation. By Wednesday, a 4th woman came forward with a Dropbox link full of screen recordings. Each clip had Vance's voice saying things like, "A man's supposed to test her willingness to invest. If she balks, she's not partnership material. She's a passenger." I kept my reactions clinical. Every clip time-stamped. Every chat backed up. Every voice note transcribed and filed. It's remarkable how calm you get once you stop trying to be liked. On Thursday, I went to Cascadia. The manager, a man in his 50s named Miles, met me near the bar, where couples in tailored coats laughed over oysters. His handshake was steady but cautious, like he was still deciding if I was a customer or a complication. I explained what had happened. He didn't blink, which told me he'd heard versions before. When I mentioned Vance's name, his eyebrows twitched. "We've had incidents," he said carefully. "Same party size, same pattern. Always the same man reserving the table." He gestured for me to follow him to the back office. On the screen, a paused security video showed a familiar table, our table. "Would you like to confirm identities?" I nodded. The video rolled, the 6 of us laughing, me smiling too wide, the wine glinting red under the lights. Then, the check sliding, my hand hesitating, his expression hardening. Miles paused it there. "Exactly as described," he said. "If you're willing to provide a written statement, we'll ban the group." "I'll sign whatever you need," I said. When I left, I felt lighter, not vindicated yet, but aligned with something real. That night, I launched the site, testtabletruth.com. Minimalist design, black text, white background. The first section read, "This page documents a recurring pattern of coerced partner tests conducted under false pretenses at multiple restaurants in the city. Evidence provided by multiple women and hospitality staff." No names, no photos, just behavior, structure, and proof. The next morning, the link had already traveled. My analytics showed 600 visits before noon. 2 messages hit my inbox. One from a woman thanking me for giving her a name for what happened. Another from a journalist asking for comment. I ignored both for the moment and went back to work. Real work. The kind with contracts and deadlines that didn't involve heartbreak or hashtags. But by that afternoon, Vance called. The number flashed familiar. I shouldn't have answered, but curiosity has its gravity. "You think you're clever?" His voice carried that too-even calm that only comes right before someone starts yelling. "I think I'm factual," I said. "You posted lies. Prove it. You're ruining my reputation." "Your actions did that. I just formatted them." He exhaled sharply, and I heard movement. Maybe pacing, maybe posturing. "You made this personal." "It was personal when you used people for sport." Then he said it, the line that told me I'd hit the right nerve. "I could sue you for defamation." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "You'd have to testify that your tests were real for that to hold up. Please do." Click. By Friday, the ripple became a current. Cascadia's parent company issued internal memos banning the Test Table group from all their locations. Other restaurants quietly followed. A new Reddit thread titled #TestTableScam hit trending. Dozens of women posted their experiences, each one eerily consistent. The charm, the friends, the dinner bill ambush. Saturday morning, an email pinged from an unfamiliar address, IRS.gov domain. "We've received your submitted materials and will review potential tax discrepancies related to the attached claims." I sat back and exhaled. Vance had once posted a TikTok about leveraging lifestyle as a business expense. He'd even tagged #SmartMoney. Apparently, that kind of smart had an expiration date. By Sunday, the dominoes began to fall. A woman named Shay, one of the 5 at the dinner, messaged me through the site's anonymous form. I want out. I didn't realize how deep this went. Vance said it was harmless. I see now it's not. Please don't post my messages, but I'll testify if needed. I wrote back, we're not here to destroy, we're here to stop. She replied, I'm in therapy now, thank you. It's strange how the same mouth that delivered cruelty can, in the right light, speak apology. I saved her note under turnarounds. 2 days later, Bethany called, breathless with disbelief. Did you see Vance's LinkedIn? I pulled it up. His headline, Marketing Innovator and Relationship Strategist, was gone. Now it read, Open to Work. He'd deleted every post about standards and investment tests. The last one standing was a quote image that said, Growth hurts. The comments were merciless. Looks like he's trending for all the wrong reasons, Bethany said. Maybe for the right ones, I murmured. But the best came a week later. A journalist from a local lifestyle paper published an expose titled, The Dinner Test, When Dating Becomes a Pyramid Scheme. It didn't name names, but it didn't have to. The details were surgical, the evidence airtight. At the end of the article, a small paragraph quoted a restaurant spokesperson. We've permanently banned the individuals involved and are cooperating with tax authorities. We commend the women who came forward with documentation. The site's traffic doubled overnight. My inbox filled with gratitude and a few predictable threats. I archived the threats, flagged them for evidence, and left the thanks open like small lights on a dark map. The group fractured almost instantly. Screenshots surfaced from their own chat, panicked accusations, demands to know who snitched. Someone leaked their internal messages to a gossip forum. In one of them, Marissa wrote, Vance better fix this before I fix him. He didn't. Within 2 weeks, I heard from Miles again. You'll like this, he said, sending a photo from security. Vance, at the same Cascadia bar, trying to order. The host refused him politely. He left without saying a word. That night, I finally closed my laptop before midnight. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from completion. When I looked at the timeline on my wall, the sticky notes now curling at the corners, it read like a record of recovery more than revenge. Each note was a step out of someone else's narrative. The last one said simply, move forward. I left it there. Part 4, Fallout and a Healthier Start. 3 months later, the story had settled into the city like weather. Everybody knew it had happened. Nobody remembered the first drop that started it. The site still ran quietly in the background, averaging 100 visitors a month. Every few weeks, a new message arrived from someone who'd found it just in time. I almost went to that dinner. He used the same lines. You saved me from a $1,500 mistake. Each note was a small act of reclamation, and I saved them in a folder titled Not Broken Evidence, because survival counts too. Vance, meanwhile, had evaporated from public life. He'd deleted everything except a single private account under a new alias. But the internet forgets nothing. If you searched his old handle, the third result was still my site. The fourth was the article. The fifth, a Reddit thread captioned, Test Table Vance Spotted at Applebee's Splitting the Bill. That one made me laugh, the kind that finally leaves your chest instead of sitting on it. Bethany texted me the photo, a grainy shot of him at a two-top, smiling stiffly as the check sat between him and a woman holding her own wallet. Poetic, she wrote. Growth, I replied. The rest of the inner circle had scattered. Maddie tried to start her own exclusive dating standard group under a new name, but within a week, the same restaurants banned her too. Someone had made a Facebook group called Test Table Watch, a small community where servers, hosts, and dates swapped warnings. It wasn't vindictive, it was protective. Sometimes justice looks less like a headline and more like a network that finally talks to itself. And then there was Marissa, the sister, the ex-girlfriend, the echo. She reappeared on social media a month later, calling herself a financial trauma survivor. She posted teary videos about how she'd been manipulated into manipulation. The comments weren't kind. Someone uploaded screenshots of her messages threatening people. Another wrote, "You're sorry because it stopped working." Her follow-up post read, "Everyone deserves redemption." Maybe they do. But redemption starts where denial ends, and she hadn't reached that border yet. As for me, I started saying no differently. Not defensive, not angry, just final. It's surprising how powerful no sounds when it isn't followed by an explanation. One Friday night, I met someone new. His name was Eli, a graphic designer with quiet eyes and a laugh that didn't sound rehearsed. We'd matched weeks earlier, but I'd ignored him. Too tired, too wary. He'd messaged again gently. Still up for that coffee, or did my meme scare you off? I said yes this time. We met at a small place that didn't care about appearances. He ordered a chai. I ordered whatever smelled like cinnamon. Conversation was easy. None of the resume building that dating had turned into. Just questions that sounded like curiosity instead of auditions. When the check came, he reached for it. Old instinct made me move first. I'll get mine, I said. He smiled, hand pausing midair. We can split if you want, but this one's on me. Why? I asked, not suspicious, just studying. Because it's a nice night, he said, and because next time you'll probably beat me to it. It wasn't a test, it was kindness. Simple and unperformed. I let him. Outside, the air smelled like rain and streetlights. He walked me to my car, but didn't hover. Text me when you get home, he said. Not because I need you to, because I'll want to know you did. I drove home without the usual post-date autopsy running in my head. No second guessing, no recalculating, just quiet. Later, when I checked my phone, there it was. Hope you got home safe, and if you didn't already, transfer that savings back to checking before someone else tries to run a test. I laughed so hard I startled myself. I texted back, already did. I only invest in interest that earns me peace now. Before bed, I opened my site to his admin dashboard one last time. I hovered over Update and typed a new final entry. It's been 3 months. The dinners stopped. The women learned to recognize the setup. The restaurants talked to each other. The world didn't end, it just adjusted its filter. If you're reading this because someone tried to make your self-worth a bill, remember, tests reveal more about the tester than the tested. Keep your receipts, keep your boundaries, and don't apologize for passing your own test. I clicked publish and watched the text settle into place. Outside, a storm started softly. Inside, for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like one.